All right, let's look at lesson 42, the most exciting action-packed book of the Bible. And we're looking now at verse 5 through 11 about the woman and the beast. In chapter 17, we have the woman, the bride of the Antichrist, and the beast, the Antichrist. And we're going to learn some more about her. We kind of had a little bit of introduction to her in that first part. In this lesson, in verse 5, and upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. So you're going to be able to identify her pretty quick. In this. And so in this, her name is Mystery, Babylon the Great, and the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So, number one, list the three parts of the name that was written on the forehead of the woman. A, Mystery. B, Babylon the Great. And C, mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Now, is she the only one that's got a name in her forehead? Now, you remember the 144,000 have the name of God in their forehead. And then if you're going to worship the beast, you're going to have a mark in your forehead. If you're going to buy or sell, you'll have the number and the name in that. So there's a number of ways of identifying and will be identified during that time. And the problem today is that a lot of Christians don't want to be identified as Christians. Well, I'm not ashamed to be called a child of God. I'm not ashamed to be a Christian. And I want everyone to know, not only by my actions, the way I do and conduct, but even by my voice. I don't have to guess. I'll tell them. If they don't see it, I'll tell them I'm a Christian. And we need to, and we need to take a stand involved in that. But that's a different story. All right, verse 6. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of saints and with the blood of martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. So the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints and martyrs of Jesus. Now remember, for a lost person, when they're saved during the tribulation period, what's going to happen? You have their head cut off. Now you'll have those who've heard the true gospel before the tribulation period. They'll not be saved during that time. But you've got multitudes of people, even in churches, that have not heard the true gospel. But for them to be saved is not to come down and we'll shake your hand, and come down and we'll cut your head off. And this is going to be executed by the bride, which is the false church, during the tribulation period. The bride of the Antichrist. Now in verse 7, and the angel said unto me, wherefore doest thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carried her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. And you see, if you'll just read along enough, far enough, you'll find the explanations for the different things in the Bible. So will the angel explain to John about the mystery of the woman and the beast? Yes. The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition, and they that dwell on the earth shall wonder. Now this begins to sound familiar. Was, is, not, or not, and shall. When you go back to chapter 1 about Jesus, talking about he came, born of a virgin, that he died on the cross, was buried, he was raised again. Now the beast, you remember when we studied that in the very beginning of the introduction of the beast, he had 7 heads. One was wounded unto death, then he came back alive again. So that's what this is dealing with. Mockery of everything that God does. See, they're doing in this. Whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. And so the woman is on the beast that was, is not, and yet is, the Antichrist. Remember, one of his heads was wounded to death and then came back to life from mockery of the death of Christ and his resurrection. So list the three descriptions that are in the first part of verse 8. The beast was. B, the beast is not. C, the beast shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. Now a little note on this. The phrase was is in reference to Revelation 13, 1 and 2. The phrase is not is in reference to Revelation 13, 3 about the beast's head being wounded and brought back to life. When one of the heads died and lived again. The phrase out of the bottomless pit is in reference to Revelation 20, verse 1 and 3, through 3 and 7. We'll be getting to that a little later on. Now list the three descriptions that are in the last part of verse 8. The beast was. The beast is not. And the beast yet is. Now here is the mind which hath wisdom. The seven heads are seven mountains on which the woman sitteth. Now this has been a problem down through the years. Now we know and have we've seen the prototype. And this is prophesied in Daniel of the image and where it came down to the two legs of iron and the 10 toes that was on that, which is the Roman Empire. And then when the Roman Empire was divided into two divisions, the 2 legs, and then 10 toes into 10 divisions, 3 of those were plucked up and given to one. And it had a great mouth and eyes and so on. It spoke blasphemy against God. This is all in Daniel in dealing with that. And that's the Roman Catholic, or the Roman Empire. Catholic means universal. And the 3 divisions that were plucked up and given to one, that's the Roman Catholic Church. The Roman Catholic Church is part of the Roman Empire. When you go to the Vatican, they can demand that you have a passport, and they can demand that you get their currency. They have a Secretary of State, they have a Secretary of War. You do not put an ambassador, send an ambassador to a church. You send ambassadors to nations. And not many years ago, America finally recognized the Vatican as a nation, and we have an ambassador to the Vatican, and we received their ambassador here in the States, and so has some of the other nations. That's part of the Roman Empire. And this is what, well, because of that, in the past, they said, all right, the 7 mountains, the only city on 7 mountains involved in all this is Rome. But Rome did not fit the other descriptions. I argued for years that it wasn't Rome, that it had to be Jerusalem, but Jerusalem wasn't on 7 mountain peaks. Until 1971, I received some information. I was standing, I didn't take this picture, I didn't jump out of the balloon on that thing, but I was over here on the Mount of Olives. I was taking a picture of this area, of this mountain here, and the guy said something to me. He said, for the first time in our history, Jerusalem is now on 7 mountain peaks. You talk about a Baptist preacher shouting and jumping all over the place. I said, that's it. I've been preaching that. I've known that would be now today, that day. I said, now we know that these 7 mountain peaks is not talking about Rome, it's talking about Jerusalem. And so we find that now, as we look at this, the main mountain is Mount Moriah. That's where the temple site is. Now, Jerusalem has enlarged now and taken all this in their city limits. Before it wasn't. You have Mount Zion. Then you have Mount Ophir. Then you have Mount of Offense, located here. Then the Mount of Olives, which we're familiar with. We're familiar with these 2 mountains. Today, all of this has been filled in around here. That's hard to tell one mountain from the other. And now, and then you have the Mount of Scopus. And then the one that we think about all the time is the Mount Gazelle, or we call it Calvary. 7 mountain peaks. And the beast now is ruling over Jerusalem during the tribulation period. And his bride is in charge of this. So here are the 7 mountain peaks in Jerusalem. So what do the 7 heads of the beast represent? 7 mountains. No, Jerusalem has grown and is now built on 7 mountains. Verse 10, and there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. All right? And so now we find that the 10 horns represents 10 kings. So what else do the 7 heads of the beast represent? That's not right. That should be the 10 horns. Of course, in this, how many kings are fallen? 5. True or false? The 6th king is left and the 7th king is to come. It's true. Now, how much time does the 7th king have when he comes? Just a short time. Who will be the 8th king? The beast, the Antichrist. Now, who is the 7th king and goes in perdition? That is the beast, the Antichrist. The 7th king gives his place to the 8th king, and the 8th king becomes the 7th until he goes in perdition. Now, you'll study that over and over again until you get the whole background. Does it really fall in place in your mind on that?